Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Whole Family Health Live. Alda here, a registered doctor of Chinese medicine, an acupuncturist, and also mindfulness instructor. And I am just coming in with my theme of planting and watering seeds and nourishing life. So I've actually never done this before. I have gardened quite a bit, but I've never started from seed. I've only taken shortcuts and gone from seedlings and starters, and I've transplanted them. So this is a new thing for me. Like a lot of things in this time right now, I think we're all kind of having to explore new ways of being and new ways of doing things. You know, how do I switch this camera around? Here we go. So yeah, things are just kind of different, right? The status quo is changed. And I find that for me, I've had to, I don't know, it's just kind of sparked like deep looking deeply at things, and just, you know, the way that things are, and having to, you know, a lot of my regular habits just aren't working for the limitations of the time. So having to kind of create new habits, and this is a lot of what mindfulness is about. Let me see. I've also never really mastered, I'm not really an IT person, so I haven't really mastered this whole thing of using social media, and okay, I think that's good. So yeah, so planting seeds. You know, I've kind of been reflecting on where does stuff come from? Like, where does toilet paper come from? And where does like food come from? And was inspired to plant seeds. Planting seeds is also a very common recurring theme in my life, you know, as a reproductive specialist and working in fertility. You know, in Chinese medicine, we talk a lot about nourishing the soil before planting the seed. So a lot of focus on preconception care and, you know, what it is that we want to continue. So one of my mentors, Dr. Randine Lewis, she wrote the infertility cure. So she's actually Western medically trained, but then encountered some of her own reproductive challenges and fertility challenges. And the Western medical options, which I think at the time were limiting. And so she started exploring Chinese medicine. And so she's really trailblazed the integration of Eastern and Western medicine. She also went through it. So she's very intimate with the mental emotional process. And so in one of our trainings, one of the questions that she posed was, you know, in this process, it can be a really powerful thing to, and also healing thing, to reflect on what it is that we want to continue. What is it in us that wants to reproduce? So what seeds do we want to plant to continue and to water and to grow? You know, what kind of fertilizer do we want to have in this soil that we're planting these seeds in, and what kind of seeds do we want to grow? What is it in us that wants to reproduce and continue? And then in my mindfulness practice, how I've really come to understand the nature of the mind from my mentors and teachers is understanding the mind by looking at it also in a way that is reflective of planting seeds. So how I've come to understand the nature of the mind is that the mind comes in two parts. So there's the store, we have our store consciousness, which is kind of like the basement of our house, and then we've got like our mind consciousness, which is kind of like our living room. So, okay, this is gonna bother me. This is like slightly askew. That's much better. So basically, we all come into being with all of the seeds in our store consciousness, and we all have the same seeds. So we all have the same potential stuff, right? So like fear, anxiety, despair, depression, jealousy, shame, all of that. And then we also all have the seeds for happiness and peace and joy and skillfulness and equanimity. So we all have all of these potential seeds, and as we, walk through life and our experiences, and maybe through some of our genetics or ancestral experience, for example, if we have a precondition to mental illness, we might have a predisposition for watering certain seeds. And so as we walk through life and have our experiences, different seeds are watered in our store consciousness, and then they sprout and they grow as mental formations into our mind consciousness. And so a lot of what mindfulness practice is recognizing these seeds and just seeing them as mental formations. So with that, I'm just really into the idea of seeds and nourishing and planting and watering seeds. So I think that, there's a way in which I think particularly right now, we, one of the things that we really grapple with a lot is, this sense of not being in control. So I think, particularly in the world of fertility and trying to conceive, there is this constant sense of, with most things in our lives, is we can make them happen. And so, something like a pregnancy loss or, cycle after cycle, not being able to create a pregnancy despite, putting sperm and egg together, is kind of crazy making. And it's this sort of, and even right now in this situation with the whole COVID-19, it's like we don't really know, there's so much uncertainty. We don't really know how this is all going to unfold. And so there's not much that we can do to we don't know what the future brings. And we don't really, we don't really have control in an ultimate sense over the future. And also with the past, the past is done. There's nothing we can do to go back and change the past. But the present moment is where we do have agency, and there is space, like we have control over the present moment in terms of having agency in what seeds we water. So for me, this is a really effective practice, and throughout the experience of, it's sort of a life thing. I think particularly in dealing with fertility, I'm kind of speaking to it. It's Canadian Infertility Awareness Week, so I want to speak to that. Again, the present moment is where we have agency and some kind of sense of control. So the past leads to the present moment, and the present moment also unfolds into the future. So what we do now is everything. It's kind of all we have. And so with that, I think that one of the most powerful things that we can do is, access the present moment. And one of the most direct portals to the present moment is actually our body and our direct sensations and our direct senses. And so a lot of what mindfulness practice is coming into our direct senses, whether it's breath awareness or a body scan. It is, it occurred to me recently, the whole expression of like coming to my senses, coming into my senses. There's something very grounding about that. Often our bodies are here doing one thing and our minds are just like off doing another thing, right? Like I could go through a whole day and my body's just been breathing all day, but at the end of the day, I was completely unaware of it. It was just, my mind was totally somewhere else. So our bodies are this, amazing anchors and amazing portals into this present moment that we can access all times. And it is really about direct sense and direct sensation, because this is what actually strengthens these neural pathways that help us to override our negative thought patterns and emotional patterns, so that they're not, so that we're not like enslaved by them. So with that, I think that I would like to maybe share a little bit of a poem with you, because what it speaks to is again this kind of, it's called guest house, so it speaks to this sort of idea of, again, the stored consciousness and then the mind consciousness and the basement and the living room, and you know, basically making room for all of the guests that come into our living room. So it's not about suppressing the negative thoughts. It's not about, you know, if you had like a neighbor that, you know, that was kind of uncomfortable and unpleasant to be around, and they showed up at your house, you would want to welcome them. You don't, you know, I think that our, you know, our response, our automatic reaction is to maybe want to, you know, make them go away or, you know, distract ourselves, you know, from them. Just be, oh, I'm sorry, I'm busy, I'm making dinner, and then, like, you know, go and hijack it to the kitchen kind of thing. So the idea is that, you know, a lot of my mindfulness practice, one of the most powerful practices is, you know, reflecting on, so, you know, what seeds are we watering? And then also, you know, what is my suffering and how do I take care of it? And what is my happiness and how do I nourish it? Because I think one of the key things that we can do, you know, when we think about our suffering, it's like you kind of want to like let it go, or you want to like get rid of it, right? But I think that actually we want to take good care of it, and the only way that we can do that is actually to nourish our happiness. Because without our happiness, we can't take care of our suffering. It's kind of like one time, you know, one of my teachers explained it to me, described it to me as, you know, if I was like a cup of water, and somebody dumped like a cup of salt into it, that water would become super, super salty and very concentrated and very unpalatable, right? Like we wouldn't be able to drink out of it. That water would not be able to nourish us. But if I was like a river and somebody dumped a cup of salt into the river, I could still drink from that river. It would still be refreshing and nourishing, and there would be more space, right? So, so I think, you know, how we can, you know, help to expand that cup to be more of a river is to actually nourish our happiness, because our minds have a negative bias. We're actually evolutionarily, the brain has developed to rely more on, you know, focusing on the negative. You know, because if we saw something as primitive people, and if we thought to ourselves, oh, that thing is dangerous, and we fled, we had a better chance of survival. So for us to create a positive memory is actually takes a lot more. Like we have to actually stay with that positive experience for much longer, and we have to, you know, be in our senses and kind of take in that positive experience in all of our senses to create more of those neural pathways before we can actually make an implicit memory out of it. Whereas negative stuff sticks, and then it just like, it keeps coming back. It like puts itself right there because it's helped us to survive in the past. So we have to really, really, really consciously water our more nourishing seeds. So I'm just going to share this poem with you. It's by Rumi, and it's called The Guest House. And it goes like this. The guest house. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. They may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So I just love this because it's really, we're talking about pleasant and unpleasant and like positive and negative. And I think it's important to differentiate, but a lot of mindfulness practice is also about cultivating equanimity and non-judgment. So again, inviting every guest into our living room. That's part of the making space piece, right? So coming back to, yeah, what is my suffering? How do I take care of it? What is my happiness? You know, how do I nourish it? Watering these positive seeds. And so using the body as a portal, you know, coming into our senses. This is, you know, when we're directly in our senses, you know, aware of our breathing, or, you know, feeling the chair beneath me, or even like feeling this light breeze right now. When I'm in those senses and in that experience, my mind is not in the past and it's not in the future. It's actually free. It's free from these, you know, kind of afflictions, free from these, free from this suffering, right? So, so with that, I would like to propose an exercise in this time of just every day coming into your senses in some way, even if it's just like 3 breaths, or, you know, if you're sitting in your chair or drinking your tea, you can just take a moment to actually feel your tea, right? So I've got this cup of tea here. So before, you know, normally I would just, you know, when we're in autopilot, we just kind of do our thing without thinking, right? Everything's unconscious. Mindfulness is about interrupting this and creating space so that we have more agency, so that we can make this moment into whatever it is. Every moment is an opportunity. So exercise our agency towards freedom and our choice to water the seeds and that nourish us. So, you know, so for example, with the tea, I would stop and I would feel, so you know, I can feel that the cup is warm, I can smell it, I can even look at it. And then when I take a sip, I really, really taste it and really, you know, feel it in my mouth, and feel it as it's nourishing my body. So I'm going to invite us all to do that. With that, I'm just actually going to share another little poem because I feel like it's a good exercise, and so I'll try to put it in the comments of this post. If I think I can do that. The first poem was called The Guest House by Rumi. This poem is called If Today Gets Difficult, Remember, and it's by somebody named Nina Hoffman. So if today gets difficult, remember the smell of coffee, the way sunlight bounces off a window, the sound of your favorite person laughing, the feeling when a song you have that you love comes on, the color of the sky at dusk, and that we are here to take care of each other. So I love it because it's, you know, when we think about nourishing our happiness, I think we often think about big things, you know? It's like maybe going on holiday, like it's got to be this sort of big deal of a thing, but really it can be in the small moments, right? And really all of these things were like sense things, like the smell of coffee, you know, like how beautiful it is when sunlight bounces off a window, or like the sound of someone's laughter, you know, or like when your favorite song comes on, like sound is, our senses are so strong, they just take us right to, you know, like sometimes I'll smell something, it'll just take me right back to a memory, right? So our senses are very powerful. So it could be a really simple thing of just like noticing and coming into the present moment and just sort of being aware of all of the wonderful, you know, conditions that we already have to nourish our happiness. They're here all the time. We just have to remember and take them in. So yeah, I don't know, that's it. Maybe we'll just do like 3 breaths. I gotta do like a practical thing, right? So here's just like 3 breaths. We can just, at the sound of the bell, we can let the bell remind us to return to the present moment and our breathing. And the beautiful thing about a bell is that we hear it with our ears, but we also hear it with every cell of our body, right? So it invites us into the moment, and even just like 3 breaths, just coming into our direct senses. And those are 3 breaths of just freedom from like the stuff that's uncomfortable, without like pushing the uncomfortable stuff away, right? So just recognizing it, seeing it for what it is, not judging it. It's a guest in our living room, that we invite in with love and care and tenderness. And yeah, so here we go. Okay, and so with the sound of the next bell, I'm going to invite you to just come back into awareness of the space around you. And that's it. You know, I never realized, I'm just on a balcony in the back of my house, and I actually never realized how many birds there are. It's so beautiful. So yeah, that's it, friends. Hopefully that's helpful to you. You know, it can be just a little bit of an exercise every day to stop and take note of something, you know, that you can take refuge in. And it can be simple, you know, just something that's right there. All right, there we have it. Please, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in a direct or private message or in the comments. We have a lot of wonderful things rolling out for you the rest of the week to support you through this time. Tomorrow, Christina's going to talk about detoxing your house and your body. We've got some yoga and acupressure on Wednesday, same time, and on Thursday we've got some anti-inflammatory foods, superfoods, and on Friday we're going to be speaking to a clinical counselor who can answer our questions about connecting with our loved ones. So, lots of love to you all, and enjoy the evening, enjoy your breathing, enjoy the sensations, the smells, the sights, the wonders that surround us all the time. I know it sounds like so cliche, but it's for reals. All right, thank you so much.